So this two-camera setup reminds me of starting out in the business. Ardmore Studios in Dublin is where they made lots of films like Zardos and Purple Taxi and all sorts of pictures, all the Christopher Lee, Fu Manchu. But when I was starting out as an actor, I had to get my form signed to join Equity. And I went to Ardmore Studios and somehow wrangled my way in, blah, blah, blah. And I saw this sign on the door that said, John Borman. I remember Borman from the many movies that he made, particularly the Lee Marvin movies. I thought, fucking hell, he's bound to know me, which was totally illogical. But I went in and anyway with the form, knocked the door, went in with the form, and that was the longest office I've ever seen. It was plush red carpet all the way. But there's two cameras in there. Not running, but obviously cameras he had used previously or just decoration, wherever it was. So I went up to his desk and he was looking at me really funny. And I said, Mr. Borman, I love all your movies. I love all the films you make. I think you're wonderful. He says, what do you want? I says, I just need my form signed to join Equity as an actor. He says, what's your name? I said, Paul Conway. He said, Paul Conway, fuck off. And I had to turn around, walk back through this long corridor, this long carpeted room, tripped on the fucking carpet as I got to the door, walked out, and I never went to see another John fucking Borman film in the picture house as long as I lived. That's my John Borman story. That leads me into the business. I got a part in a play by Liam O'Flaherty. It was based on a novel that had previously been shot by John Ford. It's called The Informer, and Liam Neeson was playing The Informer. And I hadn't met Liam Neeson, or I was 17 or 18. I hadn't met most of the actors, hadn't even heard of them. Anyway, I was told to turn up on a Monday morning in Merrion Square in Dublin at a certain number. I think it was number 4 or 4. But anyway, I got to the place, I went in, I saw all these people sitting down. There was a podium set up with a microphone. I thought, fucking hell, I've made it. I'm on my way to Hollywood. So I sat down, I was looking around, there's no Liam Neeson, but he's the only face I would have recognised. Somebody came out and said, good morning, everybody. Everybody went, good morning. And I thought it was the assistant director or something like that. And he said, my name is John. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to the meeting. I thought, oh, fucking hell, I've walked into the wrong room. So I get up and I started tiptoeing out. I said, really sorry, I'm in the wrong place. And the guy stood up and says, we were all like that at the beginning, son. Please sit down. I could not get out of the fucking room. They wouldn't let me out of the room till I fucking had to push my way out, and then found the original door I was looking for, went in where all the actors were, and I was late for the first day rehearsal because of fucking AA. That's another story. I suppose just sticking with stories at the moment about the business. I used to box and things like that, but as a miserable existence, I knew a lot of boxes. I didn't want to end up with cauliflower ears and, a scanty nose. So I picked acting for some peculiar reason, and been working at it since I was 16 years of age. After John Borman, I went and got my form signed, and I got various parts, including The Informer and things like that. There was one big one where there was an American director came to Dublin. Never heard of him before. He was holding auditions in Irish Actors Equity, which is the Custom House beside the Liffey. And he booked himself into a hotel. And he cast myself. It was a play, it was a film version adaptation of Brendan Behan's The Borstal Boy, if I remember correct. The script was fucking brilliant, it was terrific. And he cast myself and 7 or 8 other guys, all of whom I knew. And he said, come to the hotel and we do the readings every day, blah, blah. So we went to the hotel and started to realise he was buying drinks for us 10 o'clock in the morning at the beginning of rehearsals. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he was bringing, should we say, women of a disrepute into the room, and everybody was having fun and all sorts of stuff. Never got paid a penny, but about 2 weeks into the rehearsal, I'm walking down the quays in Dublin, and I see cops every fucking where outside the hotel. I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, something's really bad is happening. So I got to the hotel, and the mates are all standing outside saying, what's going on? And eventually, somebody came out and said, the director, supposed director, has just been arrested. And he's going to be put out on bail or whatever. The guy was a con man, and he set up the greatest con ever, saying he was going to make a movie, put everything on the tab, I'll pay for all the bills, I'll pay for all the food, I'll pay for this, that, and the other. Anyway, he got out after a couple of weeks, and then disappeared completely. Back to the States, apparently, and we never heard of him again. But that was a lesson. of not trusting anybody. Another lesson of not trusting anybody is anybody out there who's a writer. I remember years ago I wrote a script called Leprechaun, because I'd been invited by an associate of Roger Corman's to meet in a bar with a mate of mine. And I'd written the script. I didn't take the script because I didn't know what they were looking for, but I knew they were looking for horror films. And the guy said, have you got anything that might sell? I might have a name to it. I said, yeah, I've written this film called Leprechaun. He said, sounds interesting. So I told him the story. A group of Yanks come to Ireland and, you know, as they do, only Yanks can do, they find a leprechaun, you know, they trap him and blah, 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 and he has to take them to where the pot of gold is. They get the pot of gold and he fucks off the family. The Americans go back to America with the gold and he's distraught. But what they don't realise, he's a psychopathic leprechaun. And he trails them back to America and he starts killing them all in the most gloriously technical and vicious ways that you could mention. Anyway, I told the story to this guy and I never heard from him again. And about a year later, I'm walking down the street in Dublin. I think it was the Carlton Picture House in O'Connell Street. And I'm passing and I see a thing on the wall that goes, Jennifer Aniston, who nobody heard of at that time, in Leprechaun. The bastard had taken the idea, gone back to Roger Corman, fucked off to America, made the goddamn film. Now it's one of the most expensive and, you know, money-producing franchises on the DVD and VHS circuit. They still sell a fortune on VHS, believe it or not, the original copies. But yes, I lay claim to the fact that I gave this guy the idea of Leprechaun. Let me just take a sup at this here because it's tantalising. I'm just trying to think of any other actor stories for you. I forgot to tell you, the night before I did the audition for The Informer, a friend of mine, Simon, now passed away, his uncle had been murdered. And the body, well, we knew he'd been murdered, but the body had never been found. And we volunteered to go out and look for this body. This is in the tenements of Dublin where they got cellars and stuff like that. Anyway, we found his hip, believe it or not. Got in touch with the police, which meant a journey to a phone box because there was no mobile phones back in those days. Got to the phone box, called the cops. The cops come along and verified after a few days or whatever that it was his hip. We found the hip. That was the night before I did the audition for The Informer. So maybe I should have stuck with the AA group that I walked into, and maybe they would have taught me a few things. But Dublin is a funny old place for stories and all sorts of things like that. I'll give you one of my favourites, and the names will be changed to protect the no longer living, we think. There's a friend of mine called Tomo, not his real name, by the way. Tomo, who was a bit of an urchin, but also dealt in drugs and things like that, so he's involved in nefarious, shall we say, parties, Republican parties and things like that, not to be named. But we got a message that Tomo had contracted AIDS, HIV, and he was on his way out. So myself and a friend of mine called Martin went up to see him. And this is right deep in the tenements. You don't fuck around in this place. This is like you have to get through 4 guys. Cops won't even go into this place to get to the stairs to go up to Tomo's gaff. So myself and Martin go up, and we had heard he was on his last legs, literally. So we get up the stairs, and it was like, you know, the film. It was the reverse of the film, The Wizard of Oz, where it goes from black and white into colour. So you got the colour outside. We went into a room that was black and white. This was fucking film noir. There was more candles in here. Fucking Stanley Kubrick would have been gagging to get this stuff into one of his films, you know. And the whole room was lit by candles. And there's a bed at the very back of the front living room where he stretched out El Tomo. As you walk into the room, all you can hear is now this would put Christopher Lee to fucking shame. This was just ace. Anyway, we knew his mother, and we never knew her first name, but we always called her Mrs. Tomo's mum. So we'd always say, hello, Mrs. Tomo's mum, how are you doing? You're all right, okay. Anyway, she's sitting down in the corner, little rocking chair, back and forward. You can hear it going. Now, if you grew up on Hammer horror films, you know that's the time to get the fuck out of the room, you know. People would stop playing darts at that stage in the film, even though there was no darts in the room. But she was sitting there at Mrs. Tomo's mum, and she had the old scarf around her, and she looked like something from John Ford's The Quiet Man. And she was sitting in the corner. and her hands were folded, like she was praying to Jesus. Jesus, look after Tomo. Look after Tomo. God bless you, Jesus. He's the most wonderful son. He just went a little bit astray. Now this had me and Martin almost about to burst into tears at this, which was fucking insane. And she looked around, she saw myself and Martin, she said, come in boys, come closer. Don't go too close, he's got the HIV, don't go too close. But come in anyway. And we got into the room. She says, are you boys hungry? Would you like a bag of chips? Oh no, missus, no, please, I insist, have a bag of chips each. And she called James, our other son, who was Tomo's brother. James, run down and get them a bag of chips each. Do you want a sausage? Would you like a sausage? No thanks, Mrs. Tomo's mum, no thanks. Oh, no. Do you want salt and vinegar? She went through every fucking list of everything. Till eventually James went out. At the meantime, his breathing's going, he's getting worse and he's not moving. I think God is going to take him tonight. I think my son is, excuse the language, but I think he's bollocksed. I love him. He's my firstborn. He's the best kid in the world. Lovely presents at Christmas. He might have robbed a few of them, but they were lovely presents. Do you want to say goodbye to him? At that stage, I'm thinking, I want to say goodbye to everybody. Get the fuck out of here. This is Countess Dracula, Ingrid Pitt, remember her? Yeah? All right. And he comes back, and we have to sit there and eat the chips. Do you have any funny stories about Tomo, that memory, or something you want to share? I'm thinking, fuck no. I'm thinking, fuck no. We're going to eat the chips and get out of here. So we milled the chips. The chips got out, it was lovely. And I was in the corner. So we said, look, Mrs. Tomo's mum, we're going to have to go. Son, thank you so much for being just the most wonderful friends. The most wonderful friends. If he could get up and thank you, he would himself, but he can't. He's got the HIV. And I think God's going to take him tonight. This night. Can we hug you? Oh, big hugs, big goodbyes. It was like the leaving of the families at the Titanic. So we walk out of the place, and go back down the stairs, go back through the guards on the stairs, and head back into the centre of Dublin. So we liked Tom, he was a nice guy, If you wanted a Grundig radio, he was a guy to go to, in a box, of course, Never steal from anybody's home, so it was always from shops, so I always felt it was okay, because they always paid the insurance. That's another story. We go back into town, and we go and mill a few pints in a place called the Flowing Tide. And it's really sad, and then, I wonder when the funeral is, and blah, 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 blah. Next day or two, we're down the tenements, and Thomas passed away. The funeral's going to be on Friday. Great, so got the old tin of fruits on, ties, and everything went down. It's all laid out, and all the heavies are there, and all the hands are here, and you don't know what's going on. But, Jesus, poor old Tomo. And the mother's there giving it the last 3 acts of fucking Macbeth. Oh, Tomo. And she's laying across the coffin before it goes down, and all sorts of things. And there's reeds everywhere. So fucking hell. They bury him, and everybody's sobbing. I think even the grave diggers were sobbing. They were so affected by the fucking affection that was in the fucking graveyard. They go off with the family, everyone gets pissed. But 2 weeks later, and this is just true as I'm sitting here, 2 weeks later, myself and Martin fancied an early morning pint, let's put it that way. We used to go to a place called the Early Houses, So it's about 10 o'clock in the morning. And this is where this gets really surreal. We go in and we order 2 lovely pints of Guinness, sitting down there and saying, this, that and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And in walks the Taoiseach, who is the Prime Minister, the equivalent in Ireland, the Taoiseach is the Prime Minister of Ireland, on his way to Irish Parliament, the Dáil. And he downs it, with his bodyguards, downs about 3 pints and walks back out. And I look at Martin, and I say, this is fucking surreal, man. This is crazy. This is the fucking Taoiseach. If we were that way inclined, we could have killed the Prime Minister of Ireland, if we were that way inclined. But the shock of it was interesting. He went out, and a guy came in with a cast on his leg. This will tell you how surreal this is, because it just descends into madness. He goes to the bar, and he orders, "A pint of Guinness, please." Takes time to pour the Guinness, 4 minutes usually, pays for it, takes up the pint, and starts to hobble back to the chair, to the table, or to a table. And the Guinness starts going like that. By the time he gets from there to there, he's half a pint of Guinness left. I said to Martin, we got to get out of here, or stop drinking completely, because this is totally fucked up. The day can't get... Truth, we went outside, having a cigarette. A car pulls up. It was a Zephyr car. I'd always stuck in it because the Z always stuck in my mind. The back of the card was the writing of the name of the car. It was a Zephyr, it was black. And the door opened and this fella got out and he was, whatever he was doing. I turned to Martin and I said, "Is that Tomo?" And Martin looks at me and he goes, "Fuck me, that is Tomo. Didn't we just fucking bury him?" He said, I said, "What we call? Don't say a fucking word." Tomo turned around, he saw us looking at him. We could see in his face he was shocked that he was caught. Whatever he was delivering, whatever he was doing, boom, back in the car and off. Never saw him again. Never heard another word about him. Didn't know what the fuck was going on, but we knew he'd been in trouble with a certain, shall we say, element of lads that you don't fuck around with. And what happened then was we went back to the pub where the Taoiseach had been, and the one-legged guy was the reverse of the guy from The Fugitive, you know, bouncing around the place with Guinness. And we just sat down, and I don't think we spoke a word. We just sat there for several hours. We had several pints. And the one question I think was on both our lips, and we did say it to each other, not at the same time, but it was coming. If Tomo's alive, who the fuck is in the coffin? Who the fuck is buried in Glasnevin Cemetery? Cheers. Barman, encore please.